You're listening to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast for and by Rockies fans on Rocky Mountain Rooftop. Thank you for joining us as we discuss all things baseball and Colorado Rockies.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast for Fans First Sports Network under the Rocky Mountain Rooftop banner. I am your host, Skyler Timmons, and joined here wearing a peculiar number 17 hat, it's Evan Lang.
I have a new hat.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a number on it, and it's got some guy's signature on it.
Mm-hmm. Some old man scribbled on it.
Yeah, not that old.
Mm-hmm.
Older than me, that's for sure, but...
Indeed. He's looked much older his entire life. But
he really has. That's the funny thing. It's like you go back and you look, he's one of those guys who just always looked older than he was, even when he was a rookie. You know what it reminds me of is, do you remember Denard Span? Played for the Twins and a couple other teams. Denard Span looked like he was 45 the minute he entered the league.
It's just how some faces work, I guess, in the past. Weird. He was shaving when he was 2. But, yeah, fun stuff. Before we hop into everything, Evan, anything else new going on in the world?
Well, I heard, perhaps you have heard this as well, that some guy, he had a day about him.
Oh. Peyton Manning?
Yes.
The Broncos do play today. Football. Are you happy about football season around the corner, Evan?
Yes, I am ready to be hurt again.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we do this every year where it's like, this year's going to be different. This new quarterback's going to be different. We're ready for it. But I'm ready to be hurt, so let's do it. But hey, I'm a Packers fan. I got my wish with Jordan Love last year where he really emerged and became the new QB for the team. And here's hoping that Bo Nix of those Denver Broncos can do the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've been a train wreck, but at least they're kind of slowly made some efforts, and hopefully it pans out. It at least sounds like all those reports and reporters maybe just getting planted excitement in camp and stuff. But as we know with the Rockies, any excitement in the preseason doesn't matter until you get your heart broken in the regular season.
I mean, that's pretty much every sport, though.
Yep.
Like, it doesn't matter if you go undefeated in the preseason or you go winless in the preseason. Nothing actually matters. It's like last night, Brennan Aubrey, the kicker for the Dallas Cowboys, kicked a 66-yard field goal. If this was the regular season, that would matter.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't.
Yep. Weird stuff. Oh, well. Yeah, football around the corner. All the other sports are right around the corner, too.
That's football.
Yeah, that happens. That's football.
if I ever hear Sean Payton say that, I will lose my mind.
Nikola Jokic going with
whatever happens, that's basketball.
That happens at the basketball.
Coach Bednar for the Avs. Whatever happens, that's hockey.
Whatever happens there, that's hooky.
With his accent, his rural Canadian accent.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'm smelling a whole fresh line of shirts here, Skyler.
There we go.
Whatever happens, that's blank.
That happens. That's blank. That's entertainment.
No, that's baseball.
No, there we go. Anyway, we'll hop right into it now in our done killing time. But move into it. This weekend, our Rockies just a one little homestand, 3-game set before they hit the road again out to Washington. Salute. But they had Todd Helton weekend here, coinciding with Players Weekend. Real quick, Evan, what'd you think of Players Weekend?
Players Weekend is always fun. I wish they did more for it like they used to. Like, the Players Weekend jerseys that they had in 17 and 18, and to an extent 19. But the just, had a little more fun with it. I kind of liked the numbers on the hats that they did this year, but it would have been more fun if they weren't all like the same. Like if everyone got to do their own kind of thing. because instead every individual number, every 1 was the same, every 2 was the same, and they just sort of combined them together on the sides of the caps. And that's fine, but I'd like to see a little bit more. And I love the fact that everybody can use like these fun custom bats and custom cleats and things. But you know what is why can't they just use that all season? Because
that's what I've been thinking. I'm like, why just let them do it weekend? Let them do it all year. Like, what does that hurt if they do it all year?
Yeah, one of the biggest issues that baseball has always had is marketing its individual superstars. And a great way to do that would be to continue to let them express themselves on the field. And we already have some teams that are way behind on this, like, the Yankees, who don't let their players have facial hair. But, how cool is it to see, this player has a bat that's modeled after a lightsaber. And, Ezekiel Tovar has an Incredibles themed bat, and all the cool cleats that they wear and stuff like that. Like, lean into that, MLB. Let your players express their personality and have fun with it.
Yeah. And I liked, they're talking about Charlie Blackmon. Saw some of the bats. He's like, I'm not swinging anything like that if it's not a regular, just black bat. And like, totally valid too. That's Charlie Blackmon in a sentence. Yeah, let them. This kind of stuff you should be doing all year, of highlighting, their charity causes and their specific interests. Let them express themselves.
Oh yeah, and it's like you don't have to force them to do it. Like with Chuck, that's just very Charlie Blackmon. He expresses himself in his own way. He doesn't need a fancy bat that's decorated in fly fishing motifs or something like that. He decorates himself with his beard and his mullet. But, at least give the players an opportunity to do it every now and then.
Yeah. Oh well. But yeah, at least it's back. Hopefully they can improve on it. I did not like the numbers on the hat thing. It just kind of looked weird and out of place and kind of dumb.
I like the concept. The execution was flawed.
Indeed. But surrounding all this, the Rockies got to celebrate their greatest player of all time, Hall of Famer. It's fun to still say that. Hall of Famer Todd Helton came and had his number enshrined in gold forever now up on the banister, and little pregame ceremony. And Evan, you were there on Saturday for the pregame ceremonies.
It was really great. There was a nice buzz in the stadium. As always, way too many Padres fans, but actually a decent amount of Rockies fans. This was the most packed and wild the stadium's been probably all season. I was saying if there was any actual true sellout, this was the game. The concourses were packed. The lines were long early. A lot of that probably has to do with the bobblehead, but people also wanting to get there for the celebration. I got to see the plaque and get my photo taken with it, which was a huge and meaningful deal to me. I was at the and kudos to the Coors Field people for learning their lesson. So I was at the Larry Walker number retirement and Hall of Fame ceremony, and I stood in line to see the plaque literally the entire game and never got to see it.
I got to see it.
Well, lucky you. I didn't.
Because I remember as soon as they announced, like right before the third inning, I was like, oh, I better go. Up and stood in line for quite a while. Still got in there, and then
I got somewhat close. I was at the entranceway to the Platte River picnic area where they were doing the plaque, and then they came and said, no, we're cutting the line off. And that is actually one of the few times in my entire life where I have filed a complaint at the stadium. I went to get services and I said, look, I just stood in line for the entire game and didn't even get to see the plaque. I paid money to be here, And they were great about it. They actually refunded my tickets for that game, which was they didn't have to do. So, the Rockies always have really good customer service, but they learned their lesson. They had the plaque available for viewing pretty much as soon as the gates open, up until they had to move it at 5:00 to get ready for the ceremony. And then they had it available again after first pitch. So good job with the Rockies, but getting to get my photo taken with the plaque was awesome. And just sort of wandering around the stadium, tons of Helton jerseys of many different makes. Lots of people wearing Tennessee Volunteers gear, which I thought was funny. Ceremony itself was great. Ryan Spielborgs did an awesome job as the primary speaker. Peyton Manning did a really nice speech, and then Helton's speech was short and sweet. They were joking on the broadcast today that Helton really didn't want to have to speak again, but they made him.
No, you could tell he was a lot more nervous or timid giving that speech than he was in the Hall of Fame. And yeah, he seemed a lot more timid, probably because it was much bigger, maybe just much bigger audience, all there focused on him. Whereas
Yeah.
at the Hall of Fame, it's, there's some Rockies fans there. There's people there for the other guys and stuff.
Yeah,
But you can tell
listening
he's a
to
lot
him,
more
he
nervous.
flubbed a couple words. And it was the same with Spilly. You know, Spilly's a great speaker, and he was very obviously nervous when he started his speech. You could tell there were a couple moments in time where he was holding back the waterworks because, you know our Spilly. He's a sweetheart. He's the people's sweetheart of the Colorado Rockies, and it was really, really nice, and it was great to see. You know, when they pulled the tarp away in the 17 is now has the gold ring around it for the Hall of Fame, and have it really set in. All the clips that they showed, you know, I definitely teared up several times during all of the speeches, during all the video montages, and it was really nice because throughout the game as well, they had former teammates of Helton's have little video clips filmed. Carlos Gonzalez, Larry Walker, Ubaldo Jimenez, Jason Jennings, Brad Hopp, and the one that surprised me was Ellis Burks. They had a little clip from him, and that was nice to see because Ellis Burks is kind of the oft-forgotten member of the Blake Street Bombers, but it was really, really nice, and I was really glad to be there. It's something that I have been looking forward to pretty much the entire season, and it still honestly just makes me smile to think about is, you know, our Todd Helton is a Hall of Famer.
It's too bad the game sucked.
Oh,
but,
yeah, the game was
the results of the game sucked. But hey, you got a sweet bobblehead out of the deal.
My mom, who is not a baseball fan, but had to deal with me growing up as a baseball fan, she asked if I had fun, and I said it was great, and it was awesome to celebrate Todd Helton, but, you know, we lost. And she said to me, well, then, I guess he must have felt like he never left. And I was just like,
It's true. What better way to celebrate Todd Helton than your team getting blown out?
But, you know, they won the other 2 games of the series.
There you go.
Which was nice.
We keep handily winning the series against the Padres.
Yeah. The season series against the Padres is officially clinched in the Rockies' favor. The Padres fans on the internet are seething at this. They were also quite upset that the start of the game last night got delayed by about 20-25 minutes for the induction ceremony, which is just like,
that happened before. It's like the ceremony was supposed to start at 5:30, and then I turn on like, hey, we're just starting this little pregame thing, and they did that in Larry Walker too. I was like, first pitch is scheduled in like 10 minutes. What the heck are we doing?
It was going to go over anyway. This happens with pretty much every team when they do these kinds of ceremonies, is they go over.
But why not? They say start at 5:30. Why not just start? Okay, we're starting to talk at 5:30. Like, what the heck are we doing?
Maybe Peyton Manning was in the bathroom.
Yeah, having to powder his 5 head. That man has a gigantic dome.
It's quite large. There's really no other way to say it. It's nice though. Like, I love hearing from Peyton. Peyton is the adopted son of Colorado, and, you know, Todd Helton is the favorite son of Colorado sports, you know, the homegrown hero kind of guy. But it's nice that these two are friends, and they both value our community, our little state. I like Peyton's speech a lot.
They should pool their resources and, I don't know, buy a team or something.
I wish. I mean, when the Broncos were up for sale, there were so many people who were hoping that Peyton would buy in. And I think he's got like a very, very small stake or something like that.
I think he just lives there. He lives in the rafters or something. He's just always there.
It's like those Baker Mayfield commercials from Progressive. Yeah. Those were so good. I wish they would continue those for the various places where he went. Because there are not a lot of commercials where I'm like, man, I really love these commercials. I liked those. I liked when they showed some of the clips from the old Rockies commercials, including one of my favorites, which is that's got Dinger written all over it, and it cracks Dinger in the side of the head.
Yeah, a good celebration of Todd Helton and everything. Like, we've gushed about him, so we're not going into a lot of detail here in this first segment, but then we're already running out of time. But hey, we'll keep going here with one quick little thing. Whose number gets retired next? Chuck? Chuck's got to get his
It's
next.
Chuck.
Like when you've got Todd Helton's like realizing what Chuck has done, he's like, yeah, his number should be up there too. And so I think a lot of people and players would agree, like, yeah, Chuck belongs up there. And, we saw Dick Monfort a while ago was like, oh, we'll see. We'll consider it maybe. It's but I think everybody's in agreement. Yeah, Charlie Blackmon's number deserves to be up there, along with 17 and 33.
It's a no-brainer on that one. Like, of all the Rockies do a lot of things wrong and they make a lot of weird mistakes. I think even they understand that this is a no-brainer move, and I honestly think they're going to do it the same way they did Todd.
Mm-hmm. The year after he retires.
I think they're going to do his retirement ceremony if he does retire at the end of this season. And then they're going to have him right off into the sunset. And then next season we'll have a Charlie Blackmon number retirement ceremony. And it's funny because, Larry and Todd, both of their numbers weren't really used by a lot of guys. There was one number 17 before Todd Helton. Everybody forgets it's David Need. And then for Larry Walker, you have like Chris Jones, I think it was, in 93. And then Justin Morneau was given permission to wear 33 after Larry retired. But the number 19's actually been used fairly a lot in Rockies history. Mostly a lot of one-hit wonders, guys using it for 1 or 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
The only guys on here that I think a lot of people are going to remember, even outside of Spilly, of course, the other famous 19 is Spilly, is Gabe Kapler, maybe, Jamie Wright, Edgar Clemente. Like there's just not a lot of guys on here who you go, yeah, that's who number 19 is. But
no, it's
Charlie Blackmon.
That number belongs to Charlie Blackmon. So yeah, they better do it. It's the no-brainer. And then maybe down the line, I don't know if we'll ever see it. Maybe number 28, depending on what happens with Nolan. But
unless that bridge gets repaired, that number's never getting retired. Because think about how long it took for them to retire Larry's number, where Larry Walker was a Colorado Rocky through and through, despite the fact that he played for the Expos and the Cardinals. It took until he got into the Hall of Fame for the team to retire his number.
Which is weird. That's just a weird thing with them. His number should have been retired a while.
Oh, absolutely. It should have. But I just think for Nolan, that's one that is not going to happen unless there is a big mending of bridges between the two parties.
Yeah.
Which I would love to see. I would love to see both sides come to the table. And it's the same for Tulo. Come to the table and make good and apologize and say, like, hey, man, we screwed up on this.
Hey, that Jeff Bridich guy is gone. He can't hurt you anymore.
He smelled.
But, yeah, so we'll see. I don't foresee a lot of other number retirements in the future for the Rockies, but those seem like the big three. Number 19's got to get up there.
If you had to pick one that you would retire from any part in Rockies history right now, who would you pick?
Outside of 19?
Outside of 19.
Number 5.
Would you do a dual retirement for both Holiday and Cargo, or would you explicitly do it for Cargo?
I think it's worth doing it for both of those guys. Because Holiday, despite not playing here as long, teams have retired numbers for less.
For goodness sake, look at the Yankees.
Yeah, look at the Yankees, who have no single-digit numbers outside of 0.
There's one I love Bernie Williams. He's probably my favorite Yankee ever. I don't think any other team would have retired his number. But, that's fine.
I was looking at a list of number retirements and stuff for teams. And, there's some names on there you're like, huh? But, yeah, it's a way of not honoring just the greatest of all time, but it's honoring monumental players for your team. Troy Tulowitzki's number 2. I know it's been handed out a couple of times now to other guys, but he would have been another guy. Prime, retire that number. But
I
those
always
bridges are
thought it
kind of
was
burned.
I always thought it was odd that they continued to give out Tulo's number, especially to some of the guys they've given it to, like
Yeah.
Alexi Amarista and Jonathan Daza. You know, like both of them, and then they've just most recently given it to Greg Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And it strikes me as odd that they were so quick to give that out, but it took them like 20 years to hand out Gerald Kyle's number 57.
Yeah.
Which is now being worn by Angel Chivie.
Mm-hmm. Well, and 28, who knows when 28 ever gets handed out again.
And it took them a while for 27 as well. It took them 3 years.
Mm-hmm. And number 5 hasn't been handed out since 2018.
I don't think they'll hand out number 5 again.
Then just retire it.
I agree. Because they do this silly thing where it's like they soft retire a number and it just kind of sits there. And it's like, if you're really not going to give it out, retire it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really have that many retired numbers. For me, I still would like to see Don Baylor's number 25 retired.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least do some kind of retirement thing for Don Baylor up with, Todd Helton and Larry Walker's numbers, because the Rockies aren't the Rockies without Groove, without Big Don Baylor.
Mm-hmm. Or like put up Bob Gebhard, put up his name or initials up there on the banister too. Celebrate your history more. I think that's what it comes down to. Rockies are terrible at this.
We're still waiting for that Rockies Hall of Fame and museum.
Yeah, it's such an easy thing. I've laid it out in articles before
that I'm still mad about, and I know like we were having such a nice time talking about Todd Helton.
Yeah, we got to talk about something else too.
The evolution of the baseball statue that they promised would be put back as soon as they finished building McGregor Square is still off rotting in a parking lot in pieces.
Where it belongs.
No.
According to them.
It sure feels like it. They've still got a little plaque outside of the stadium, outside of Gate E, that says, "Oh, it's coming back. Don't worry." That's been there since like 2021.
Yeah.
Just put it back. Just put it back.
Yeah. Go and buy it during their garage sale.
I would.
Go make an offer on it and then take it home.
I'll give you 2 thin dimes for it, Mr. Monfort.
But we're running a little long in this section here, so should we take a break before we get on to our next quick thing, or finish it off here?
Probably should.
Which one?
Take a break.
Oh, okay. So we'll go ahead and take a quick break here. We wasted too much time at the very beginning. I knew it.
That's what they've come
Stupid
to love
Broncos.
from us. Yeah, but now we're wasting time here in the middle, so
yeah,
does it really
I just gotta keep
matter?
wasting it. All right, we'll take a quick break here. When we come back, some housekeeping. Not so much housekeeping, but some notable things with the youngsters. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back here to Affected by Altitude. First things first here in this next section. So a pretty big move that corresponded with each other, but catcher Elias Díaz was released, is no longer a Colorado Rocky after 5 seasons in Colorado. This has caught the second most games in franchise history behind Chris Iannetta, arguably one of the best offensive catchers in Rockies history. He's definitely up there. He's probably number 2 overall. And unfortunately, just the second half of this season has just kind of been marred by injury since like May, June, and any value he might have had just cratered, and struggling injuries, not producing at the plate. And the Rockies, in need of a youth movement, decided to put him out to pasture and release him and bring up Drew Romo, who we'll touch on in a second. But your thoughts on Elias Díaz getting released, Evan?
It's sad. I've talked about this on Twitter and in some other spaces, but it's the hard part of baseball is the business side of things, where through his tenure, Elias Díaz has been known for being a great teammate, a great clubhouse presence, and a great person.
Mm-hmm.
And he's backed that up with performing pretty well. I would argue probably the second or third best catcher in Rockies history at this point. And I know that it's tough because the Rockies haven't had a lot of great catchers, but over 5 years, he really made his mark and he caught a lot of games and he was very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, this was the necessary move. You had to get rid of at least one of the veteran catchers. And for Elias Díaz, we saw him not get traded to the deadline because his value had just really kind of cratered because after May, his bat had kind of dropped off, and then he had the bilateral calf injuries that led him looking very visibly hobbled on the field. He wasn't running well. He wasn't hitting well. And he was in the last year of his contract. He's going to be 34 years old in a couple months, and it was very unlikely that he was returning to the Rockies. It had already been reported that the Rockies and Diaz camps had declined to discuss an extension. Like, it was going to end at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, as much as it does sting, because I love Elias Díaz, I really, really did grow to like him a lot with this team. And I wasn't fully on board when he first came on. I was not a Diaz believer. And he became a guy that I really liked and appreciated on this team.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to make those business moves. And this is what the Rockies needed to do, which is clear that roster spot for the future.
Yeah.
And that future is Drew Romo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. With Diaz, I liked him when he came up, and like you could see he was a good hitter. And then concussions kind of bothered him in Pittsburgh, hurt him a bit. And then the Rockies pick him up, and he's still the third string catcher in 2020 during the COVID year. Think about this. How wild is this that he was the third string behind Tony Wolters and Drew Butera in 2020? How about them? How about them apples? And then he...
you mean two future MLB managers, Tony Wolters and Drew Butera?
But when he did play, he showed this, he's still got something in the bat. He's obviously the best hitting of the three. And so he started, I think when they committed to him in 2021, turns in a wonderful year, hits 18 bombs. And you're like, okay, a catcher that can hit, this will work. Guy with a pretty decent glove behind the plate. No, not perfect. Probably left a lot to be desired, but did he have a cannon. And seemed to work well enough behind the plate. Just a tough dude. Posts up every day that you need him to. Kind of drops off in 2022. It's one of those weird things. And then right back up in 2023. Great first half. Is our all-star representative. First Rockies catcher as an all-star. Wins the all-star game MVP. And, the best year of his career. And then, unfortunately, it started off hot and then just crashed and burned this season. And so it's just unfortunate, but he was the right kind of guy you needed. The perfect scenario where you had a catcher you could rely on that did well enough on both sides of the plate to just keep you steady until somebody was ready, in your farm system to take over, whether it was a Willie McIver, a Drew Romo, a bunch of other guys, Braxton Fulford, Daniel Cope, tons of other guys. He was the perfect scenario. And so but like you said, it was time. They tried to trade him. There was no interest out there. But at least they tried a little bit. But
yeah, that's one of the things I believe the team on. I know the team gets a lot of flack because they've done this before, of saying where there were no good offers out there because they tend to overvalue. I do believe the team when they say they didn't really get any offers on Diaz because he was hurt and his performance had dropped, and there really wasn't much of a catcher's market out there for teams to trade for. I think like the one catcher that got moved was Carson Kelly.
Yeah, there's like two. And he, on his own, they probably couldn't have moved him on his own. So they should have, they could have maybe put together a package of some kind that just has Diaz included. But I guess it just didn't work out. Because I thought there was value. But yeah, just didn't work out. But fortunately, all things come to an end. Who knows? He may come back in free agency. We know how this team operates. He'll be back. You'll be sorry. But no, the end. But as a result, the youngsters are starting to get a look. And the first one is friend of the show, Drew Romo. who got called up, made his major league debut this weekend in Saturday's game behind the dish. He did not get a hit, but then who did for the Rockies that night? Just a few guys. But yeah, Drew Romo, exciting that he's finally up, the 22-year-old from Texas.
Yeah, it was really great. Big thing that I wanted to point out for his debut, he struck out in his first at bat, did not do it again.
Mm-hmm.
He made contact in every remaining at bat. Was really nice to see. Looked a little jittery when it came to pitch calling and some of his framing and defense behind the plate. But overall, I thought he did great. Like, it would have been nice to see him get his first hit, but I think in the end he put together a really solid performance, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of him. I was not happy that he did not start on Sunday.
That's pretty standard for a catcher catching the night game. It doesn't catch the afternoon the next day.
Yes, and that's why what I was going to say is, on the turnaround day, on the getaway, it's almost always Stallings, and that actually kind of gives me hope that they're just going to move Romo into that general starting catcher role.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see on Tuesday in the next game that they play.
Yeah, it's just good to have him up, and with the catchers this season, they've generally been better, especially as of late these last couple months, of mixing in Diaz and Stallings. So I expect that same pattern where Romo can catch 2 days and then it's Stallings for a day and then Romo's. Just a good balance between them, because I don't need him catching every single day because that just wears out a youngster, but it's giving him time to learn and grow here in these final 6 weeks, and for Stallings to mentor him and just help him grow. Same with Kyle Freeland and some of these veteran guys. Just help him along, get exposed and get ready. So then springtime comes, 2025, he can hit the ground running, take that starting job.
Yeah, and for Romo, it really is. I'm not asking for him to start every day because that's just not a thing that catchers do. I just need him to be playing a lot.
Yeah.
He needs to get consistent playing time, much like they've done with one of the next guys we're going to talk about, Jordan Beck.
He's Beck in black.
He's started now 5 straight games. He's started all but one game since he was called back up. And still a little rough. He had a 4 strikeout night on Todd Helton night, which was not great.
But he's also thrown out a 4-hit night.
Yes,
since coming back.
He's not really tapped into the power yet. We saw him starting to do that before he broke his hand, and I think it's going to take him a little while to find that power stroke in the bigs again. But he's playing well in the outfield. He's taking some solid at-bats. He's drawn a few walks. He had probably one of my favorite moments of the day on the Sunday game against the Padres, where Aaron Schunk took a 12-pitch at-bat, and Beck attempted to steal on something like 7 or 8 of those pitches, only to have Schunk foul it off, and he had to go back. So he's running back and forth between first and second basically the entire at-bat. Then Schunk laces a double into left, and he goes from first to home to score, and then he just goes into the dugout and is done.
He looked so angry when he sat down. I remember coaching the JV baseball one year, and I had a kid at first that I kept calling a steal, and the kid kept fouling it off. At some point, I just told him, just don't worry about it, going for the steal. And that's when the kid finally hit the ball. But yeah, it's just good to see Beck up and just ease back in and get that rhythm, because he's a guy that can fit in really nicely. And we know what he can do when he does down in AAA. He started to show it before the injury, leading up to the injury back in April and May. So it's good that they're letting him come back and get some more action. And then with Nolan Jones back, hopefully he can continue to see that action in right field, left field, and just staying in that loop. And we see Sam Hilliard and Jake Cave just kind of slowly go back down in playing time, back to where they need to be.
Yeah, exactly. Because now that Nolan Jones is back, he was activated today, and Hunter Goodman was optioned back to AAA Albuquerque. which is a bummer. I think I would have much rather had them choose between Cave and Hilliard, I think, just because for the future of the organization, there is not room for both Cave and Hilliard. You got to pick one guy to be your veteran fourth outfielder, and I'm fine with them having one of them. The problem is there's two of them, and Cave has just gotten so much playing time this year. And, you know, I'm happy for him because I believe this is the most playing time he's ever gotten in his career. Yes, he's officially played 100 games with the Rockies, which is more than he has ever played in a season with any other team.
Mm-hmm.
But now that Nolan is back, Nolan Jones, it's time for him to take more of a bench role again like he was supposed to.
Yeah.
And if you want to throw out Cave there to, I don't know, if you need to maybe DH or, you know, spell somebody for a day or continue what you've been doing, like making defensive substitutions late in the game because he is a good defensive outfielder, that's fine. He just can't be starting every game anymore. What we need to be seeing is Jones in left, Doyle in center, Beck in right.
Mm-hmm. And then you can have Chuck as your DH, or if Chuck needs the day off, then you can slide like a Beck or a Jones into the DH spot. Boom, there you go. Cave finds a spot.
I'd say Nojo for DH is probably the best fit.
Yeah, something like that.
Especially if you want to be careful with him and his back and give him a little bit more of a decreased load in terms of defensive stuff.
Mm-hmm. But so Beck's back. He's playing. Woo, another youngster. That's great. Another guy that's been playing. He's been consecutively since he came back up in June and has now had the longest starting streak at first base since Todd Helton in 2008. It's Michael Toglia, who now has 20 home runs. And Evan, he's hitting above the Mendoza line.
Yeah, for Toglia, he really has. We've talked about this a couple times now, but since he called back up in June, he's basically doing everything to say, you are not going to send me back down again. I am the starter. I am your first baseman. He has taken the role. And that's exactly what we've wanted for so long, is a guy to very clearly seize the role of first baseman. It's legitimately not something we've really had since Todd Helton retired. Mm-hmm. We've had so many different guys play first base. And to have Toglia come back up, and yeah, he struggled a lot in the first half of the season before he came back up. It was tough. He was hitting 091, and since he's come back, he's got his average all the way up to above the Mendoza line. His OPS is solid. He's got 20 home runs. He can steal, and he is as always, phenomenal defender at first base. Like, we are watching the Rockies infield defense hum like it hasn't in a while, because every single player out there is an optimal defender for where they're at.
Yeah, a good first baseman makes the world of difference, especially compared to a Montero, a Bryant, a Goodman. Those guys aren't the best first basemen. They just don't have those natural instincts and agility there. Michael Toglia does. He understands that position because that's what he's played his whole life. And so he's grabbing hold of that position like he has. And he was lofted by the defense and the power in that first month in June. But it's slowly, we're seeing that evolution for him where he's starting to hit a little bit more, hit a little bit better. He's drawn more walks. Oh, yeah, he'll still strike out and stuff. But he's hitting the ball, getting a little bit more variety. It's not all just all home runs. He has 2 home runs in the month of August right now. And he has, just in the past week since the 13th, he has 4 doubles. That is the most in a month. Well, that equaled his total coming into that little 3-game stretch.
You know what'll really give it to you? So last year, Michael Toglia was worth negative 1.5 wins above replacement for Baseball Reference. Pretty bad. He's worth 1.6 right now.
Woo.
He is one of the team leaders. He's top 5 in wins above replacement for the Rockies this year, which goes to show you his growth. And, since he came back, so he's played 63 games. it's not all perfect, but his batting average is 246, which is, considering his ability to slug and get on base, fine, because he's on base 3.329, his slugging is 0.527, 16 home runs, he's drawn 29 walks, 8 doubles, 3 triples. He's getting it done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing, is we're seeing him not be as much of a boom or bust hitter.
Yeah, there's evolution there. And you look at the month of August. Did he have a home run here on this Sunday? Coming into Sunday,
he had a very deep double.
Yeah, so in this month, 4 games where he hasn't had a hit in the month of August. There's growth, and they're not just all home runs. Like we said, he's getting singles. He's drawing walks. He's getting some doubles. He's turning into a more complete power hitter, more complete hitter. If he can continue getting that average up to like 240, 250, you'll take that.
I think what I really like for Tolia is the walks.
Mm-hmm.
Is that he's really honing his eye at the plate, where in 15 games in August, he's drawn 11 walks, and he's only had a small handful of games, like 4 or 5 games, where he hasn't drawn at least 1 walk.
Yeah. It's good stuff. Good to see. Moving right along here after Tolia, just a couple of guys, 2 pitchers. Oh, we can add 3 in here. We've talked about Vodnik a lot before. Angel Chivilli, he's slowly settling in, getting a lot better there in the bullpen. It's nice to see that growth for him. We don't have a lot to say about him because we don't see him as often. But 2 guys that we want to highlight here before we take our final break for the episode is Tanner Gordon and Bradley Blaylock. Where these are 2 guys that I think we like what we've seen from them so far. It hasn't been perfect with Gordon. He's had some ups and downs in his short amount of time. But still, him and Blaylock have made some good starts to make you hopeful about some of that starting pitching depth.
Yeah, Blaylock especially has been really impressive. He had his first start at Coors Field on Sunday afternoon and pitched 5 2/3 really strong innings. I thought we were going to be able to get him through the 6th, get that quality start, and unfortunately he had 2 guys on base. So Bud chose to go to the bullpen, which I do think was the right call. Let him end his day on a high note and not risk it. And 5 2/3 innings of 1-run baseball is more than enough of what you expect from a 23-year-old who is making his first ever start at Coors Field, especially a guy who his breaking pitches you don't really think would play well at Coors, especially his curveball, but he made it work.
Mm-hmm. He's got that splitter.
He looked great. He's looked excellent. He looked great in his start against the Arizona Diamondbacks too. This is a kid who's got 2 big league starts. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be really important to see where he goes from here as teams get more tape on him and more scouting on him. But I like what I've seen a lot for him. And for Gordon, it really is. He's just got to rein in getting hit so much. He's given up a lot of contact. He's given up a lot of home runs.
And that's going to happen when you're a guy who throws a ton of strikes.
And that's the thing, is I would love to see him. He hammers the zone, but he also nibbles a little bit sometimes. And when you're nibbling, that's when you're going to end up giving up something that's going to get wrecked. Mm-hmm. But again, another guy fairly young who has shown some promising stuff. And then you have these 2 starters who are now in the big leagues. And then you have, we talked about him last week, Carson Palmquist, Chase Dollander, and Sean Sullivan, not far behind. And, you said we don't have a ton to talk about Angel Chivilli, but I think it's worth noting that in the month of August now, he has made 7 appearances. And, he's made 7 shutout appearances out of the 9 or 10 games that he has pitched this month.
Yeah, growth. And they all learned how to pronounce his name correctly.
No, not Bud still. Post-game interview, he's still saying Chavigi, but...
Chafigi.
Mama Luigi.
Chavigi. But no, yeah, it's it's just nice to see and these are the types of depth guys you can have where, yeah, they may not be in the starting rotation right away, for next season, but hey, they can compete for it. If they don't make it, okay, they go down to Albuquerque, and they're guys you can call upon. Because, yeah, you're going to need more than 5 starters during a season to get a good look at these guys. And, okay, they can handle the big leagues. They can be effective if we need them to come up and step up. And, maybe they do take over a number 5 spot in a rotation throughout the year. It's just good to see some of these young guys getting a chance to prove themselves and show, yes, I can pitch in the big leagues. I can be here. And there's still room for growth with both of those guys, but it's good to see them getting chances and the Rockies giving them those opportunities because, hey, they got nothing else at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when was the last time you felt even somewhat confident in the pitching depth for the starting pitching depth for the Rockies, especially down in AAA?
Yeah.
Where there's really just not been a lot of starters there that you can turn and rely on. Unfortunately, some guys like Carl Kaufman who just weren't really able to develop, or Ty Block.
Yeah. He'll be back. I made this joke in our Slack channel of, do you think Bud Black was sad he had to start Bradley Blaylock because he thought they were calling up Ty Block? He misheard them and thought they were calling up Ty Block.
You know, someone just like sneezed in the middle of saying Ty Block.
Yeah.
Were you saying Block or Blaylock?
I
was saying Boo Earns.
Wait for it.
I was saying Boo Earns.
There you go. Yeah, and we'll get into it in our next segment about that pitching depth and stuff, but they're finally aiming to get those youngsters more playing time. And this is stuff they could have been doing a lot sooner, but at least now they've done this past couple years. These last 2 months of the season, they really go into it and start giving guys opportunities out of necessity. But performance of like a Michael Toglia, it puts a Chris Bryant on the hot seat of, yeah, we're not happy with what this guy's doing. And, we have this prospect rookie that's just taken over his position and displaced him.
Yeah. And we can talk a little bit about that after our break, because there was an article from the Denver Post today that did address that a little bit.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. But yeah, youngsters getting a look. They're on the rise. That's what we've been looking for all season. They just wait until the end of the year when it matters a little less at times. But yeah, what can you do? But yeah, we'll go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, housekeeping, some other general stuff around pertaining to Rockies baseball, and what Evan just teased. Ooh, intrigue. Stick around. We'll be right back. We're back here on Affected by Altitude. I realized at the end of that other segment, I started to turn into Jeff Goldblum. Oh, yes. Intrigue. Life finds a way. That guy is weird. What a weird individual and fascinating man that is.
You were too preoccupied with whether you could. You didn't think about whether you should play baseball at a mile above sea level.
That sums up the Rockies right there. But, yeah, we'll hop into it, what Evan was kind of talking about. With Tolia's back, or Tolia's been wonderful, and I don't think we mentioned it. Or did this? The timeline of this stuff gets weird. Chris Bryant went on the injured list since the last time we recorded, correct?
Yes, that's what led to Jordan Beck being called back up.
Yeah. So, yeah, once again, Mr. Glass is on the injured list. Chris Bryant just cannot buy more than 2 weeks' worth of games with the Colorado Rockies this season. And, again, is on the injured list for the 3rd time, 9th time overall with the Rockies. He has yet to play 162 games in a Rockies uniform. He's 3 games shy, Evan, of finally getting a season's worth of games.
Across 3 years.
Oh, gosh. At this rate, we'll get 2 seasons worth of Chris Bryant out of 7 years.
And the thing is, it really is. He has been supplanted. There is, at this point, nowhere for Chris Bryant to play. Because Nolan Jones is back and healthy. If he starts playing well, that locks him in. They're very clearly dedicated to Jordan Beck getting consistent playing time. And Michael Toglia has very clearly made first base his position to lose. So if you bring Chris Bryant back at all this season, where's he going to play? DH, I guess. But
they have Charlie Blackmon there, who's Charlie hasn't been what he used to be, but he's at least a more consistent and better hitter than Chris Bryant.
Yeah, Chuck Nasty has very clearly lost a step, and of course he has. He's 38 years old, but he's still playing better than a guy 6 years his junior in Chris Bryant. And the reason why I brought this up is because article in the Denver Post today by Patrick Saunders, where he spoke a little bit with general manager Bill Schmidt, and he notes that there is some pretty clear frustration from the Rockies front office in the just complete lack of production and inability to stay on the field. And the way it sounds to me, the way that it reads in this article, is that Bill Schmidt probably wants to move on from KB, and it's Dick Monfort who doesn't. And the one that the line that really strikes out to me is, he says, the Rockies are clearly frustrated by Bryant's lack of production and inability to stay on the field. But would the team ever eat the remaining $108 million on his contract to move on? It doesn't seem likely because owner Dick Monfort is the one who coveted Chris Bryant in the first place. And that just goes to show the continued, I think Bill Schmidt, he's not perfect as a GM, but I do think there is a very clear lack of communication between Bill Schmidt and his guys and Dick Monfort and his guys. And I think we talked about this a little bit before. I think that's why we don't have a decision on Bud Black. I think we had when they said, oh, we're looking at an extension for Bud before the season this year. And I think there's been a lot of back and forth where my guess is Bill Schmidt wants to move on. Bill Schmidt wants to find a new manager. And Dick Monfort, ever the loyalist, wants to be loyal to Bud Black. And there's some interesting stuff in this article from that as well, where, Saunders asks Bill about the contract solution, and all Schmidt says is, we'll talk at the end of the season. There's nothing more to report on that. And in that short sentence that doesn't say that much, it says really all we need to know.
Mom, can we get McDonald's on the way home? We'll talk about that later.
If you're good.
Oh, you're not getting McDonald's, kid. You're not getting you're not getting McDonald's.
And I really do think that Bill Schmidt gets a lot more hate than he probably should. Is Bill Schmidt a perfect general manager? No, of course not. But I do think that there is very clearly a split between what the two sides of the front office want to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's how we ended up with Chris Bryant in the first place. And I wrote back when, we first signed Chris Bryant about how that was, Bill Schmidt wanting to start building the team his way. But it's become more and more clear over the last 3 seasons that wasn't a Bill Schmidt move. That was a Dick Monfort move. And it's the same with retaining Buddy Black. And it's the same with some of the other moves that we make.
Yeah. There's definitely a disconnect up there. And I think if the owner takes a step back, I don't think Bill Schmidt signs Chris Bryant, or at least not to that kind of contract. Now, unless Dick Monfort's pushing for it and like, no, we got to get this guy. We got to get him. Because Bill Schmidt definitely liked Chris Bryant. Probably would have wanted him on his team. But that's where the guy who's been a scout his whole career comes into play, where you can see he wants to play younger guys when they're ready and just kind of be that draft and develop team. And you mentioned it before of how homegrown the lineup was today on this Sunday. I think that's what Bill Schmidt envisions more so than what we've gotten a lot this season, where Bud Black wants to play his veterans more and things like that. So when you're a general manager, you usually bring in your own regime of, I'm going to bring in my own manager who's going to work with my vision, and he's going to bring in those coaches to help further our vision together. Instead, he just sort of inherited what was already here and then didn't do anything to change it. And I think he's been slowly trying to chip away at that. And hopefully, and that leads him perfectly. Part of that is helping build up this system, which is much better as we had updated prospect rankings coming from MLB Pipeline and around the league in general. But we'll focus maybe on Pipeline because that's kind of the most prominent, easily accessible one that you don't have to pay a subscription to look through and stuff. But updated prospect rankings, top 100, top 30s. And Rockies come in, was it number 12 per pipeline? Coming at number 12. I think ESPN had them in the top 10 as well. So right up there in the upper half of the league.
A well-ranked farm system, and one of just 5 teams with 6 or more top 100 prospects.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big deal, especially with where some of these guys got put. We might as well just dive right into it and say, Charlie Condon, number 12 overall prospect in all of baseball. I can't think of the last time the Rockies had a guy ranked that high.
Ian Stewart? I'm sure there's got to have been somebody else before that, but Ian Stewart is a position player that comes to mind. I don't know why.
Brendan Rodgers, I think, was pretty highly ranked.
Maybe, yeah.
But
but nobody of like Charlie Condon's like caliber of this is a dude who will alter a franchise. What's that? The number 1 pick in the draft is behind him on our list.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say is Charlie Condon is the highest ranked prospect in the 2024 draft.
Mm-hmm.
And then right behind him at number 23 overall and well-deserved is Chase Dollander.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that the Rockies have a starting pitcher ranked in the top 25 for all MLB prospects, I like that a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's goes in like Dollander. It's kind of that herald of there's a lot of good pitching in the system. We've talked about it before. We've covered guys. Chase Dollander in their top 30. Charlie Condon's number 1 Rockies prospect per pipeline. I think a lot of places had that. Chase Dollander's also been ranked. They've kind of flip-flopped, but mostly been Condon recently. We've got Jordan Beck, number 3. Zach Veen's still hanging around at 4. Yanquiel Fernandez in the outfield at number 5. Amador's still around there in the top 10 at number 6. Brody Brecht is now number 7 prospect. Got some catches in there. Robert Callis, number 10. But then you've got Sean Sullivan at number 11. You've got Carson Palmquist at 15. Michael Persecki at 18. Jaden Hill, 21. Jack Mahoney, 22. 23 is Gabriel Hughes. Bradley Blaylock, 24. Jordy Vargas, 26. Angel Chevy at 28. Cade Denton at 29. Zach Agnos at number 30.
My man, Zach Agnos in the top 30. That makes me happy.
And who's just beyond that in the top after 30? There's a lot of guys in there.
Yeah. And there are some placements in this top 30 that I don't know if I really agree with. Like, you and I both love Benny Montgomery, but I think Benny Montgomery being in the top 20 is very optimistic considering his injury history, where he once again had a season-ending injury that has shut him down. And, that's a bummer. I love how highly ranked Jared Thomas is and Cole Messina, but I think Sean Sullivan should be ranked a little higher, honestly, with the season that he's put together. And my guess is, if you pay attention to Purple Row, we're putting out our Perps prospect rankings for mid-season. You are probably going to see Sean Sullivan ranked pretty highly in there. Mm-hmm. People are very high on him. I'm very high on Sean Sullivan. But it's just nice to, we've been saying for years that the Rockies farm system is actually good and pretty underrated. And now we can just flat out say, no, the Rockies farm system is good. And most of the baseball media agrees with us.
Yeah. And like I said, the pitching is better than you would think. The pitching depth and prospects are better than you would think. It's just, it's just a matter if it pans out at the big league level. But through the minors, at least up through AA, you got some dudes. And there's a couple that are up in AAA now in the bullpen. Seth Halverson, Jaden Hill. There's guys up there in that bullpen that, hey, we could see them pretty soon.
Yeah.
Before the season's over.
Keep an eye out on Purple Row, because that is actually my article for the day this podcast is coming out, which is that for once it feels like the Rockies bullpen has a future. Mm-hmm. Because we've got guys knocking on the door. Zach Agnos, Carson Skipper, Jaden Hill, and Seth Halverson, who have all had pretty strong or interesting seasons, and we could see them sooner rather than later, because mm-hmm. the Rockies bullpen's been bad. There's no beating around the bush there. Outside of Victor Vodnik and a couple other kind of bright spots, Angel Chevy has been pitching really well recently, and Lucas Gilbreth is finally back. the Rockies bullpen has been the worst in the league for 3 straight seasons.
Mm-hmm.
They're not good. But you can at least look down and say, oh, you know what? There's some hope right there.
Yeah. It's getting there. There's hope. And then look at the position players that Charlie Condon. How soon could he get here on a fast track? Jordan Beck's already here. Zach Veen still has that potential, but he's been dealing with injuries here this season. Yanquiel Fernandez is knocking on the door in AAA. Amador, still figuring it out down in AA, but he's getting hot as of late. He could be fighting for that starting spot next year at second base, depending on if they do anything with Brendan Rodgers. But so there's guys knocking the door. Romo's here, number 9 prospect. There's a lot of talent that can be found in the Rockies system, and it's good to see that. And it's the Rockies have been ranked higher before in the last couple of years, the preseason, and then they drop like mid-season, and then they're falling again by the next start. So you were ranked low, you've ascended up here at the mid-season rankings. Can you keep that going for the next preseason rankings? Keep developing your guys through the end of the season so you can be a good system. And then you can start using some of these guys as trade chips. Pick out, okay, this guy, they're going to be a part of it. There's no room for these guys. Let's move them for some pieces that we need to help our big league club. Let's get some relievers. Stuff like that. When you have a good system, Evan, it gives you a lot of options.
Exactly. Where you can, when your system is strong, you can actually bear it apart with. And that's something I'm going to be really interested in seeing over the next little bit, is the Rockies hopefully not being as tightly gripped onto their prospects, because you have a ton of prospects at every level of the system, but you can't keep them all. You only have 26. You only have a 40-man roster, and only 26 of those guys can be on the active roster.
Mm-hmm.
You can't keep everybody. You can't have 9 outfielders on a big league team.
Yeah, you can't hoard them and be like, oh, I need them for a rainy day just in case. Like, no, if Brenton Doyle, that's your center fielder for the foreseeable future. Okay, Benny Montgomery, sorry, but we're going to see if we can trade you somewhere and get some pieces back. Now, that's the kind of thinking we're talking about, where be open to moving guys you don't see as part of your long-term having that spot. You got to pick your guys, commit to them now, and then start moving on. We're seeing that with the Orioles. They're kind of picking out some guys. They're slowly sifting through guys, and okay, these are our main guys. These prospects who really have no spot with us, we're going to move them and get some pieces back because we're contending right now. And we just don't have room to play all of these generic-looking prospect guys.
Exactly, and it's not like trading away a prospect and having them do good on a different team, which is something I think the Rockies have been afraid of, is not actually like an indictment on your team, because it means that you were right with your scouting and your development of that guy.
Yeah.
It means that you had that one correct.
It's when they fail at the big leagues.
But you just can't keep everyone.
Yeah. You can't save everyone. That's a superhero lesson. But yeah, it's fun to see. We like looking at all the prospect stuff. Fun to see. You can go find our interviews with Drew Romo, most recently with Jared Thomas, over in the podcast feed, our Rooftop Mingles. That's the most unique name I could come up with.
I don't know. I kind of like it.
With it. Oh, well, you're up on the rooftop. What are you doing? You're just mingling with people.
I've mingled on the rooftop.
Mm-hmm. Low-key, Kyle Karros and Cole Messina, sneaky good for the Rockies. Kyle Karros having a great year with the Spokane Indians. Could be the MVP in that league this year. And then Cole Messina, Moose, was just selected in the 3rd round this year. Catcher. Dude's got some chops to him. He's one I'm high on as well. And he's with his buddy, Jack Mahoney.
It's a nice farm system where you can go down a long list of players and not really have a lot of guys where you know what, I'm not really that high on this guy.
Yeah.
You know what, I don't think he's got it. Like the Spokane Indians, especially, man, they've got a heck of a roster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are a hotbed for some stuff. Looking at this list, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys currently on their roster that are in the top 30 for the Rockies.
And shout out to the Indians for their Copa uniforms, the Cafecitos uniforms. Those have low-key become one of my favorites, up there with the mariachis for the Albuquerque Isotopes. In all of the Copa uniforms, they're really nice. It's like a nice bright yellow, cheerful color, but it looks really good on the field.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
One quick note: Drew Romo is just the 8th catcher to be drafted by and make his debut with the Rockies. Just the 8th in 30 years, 30 plus years. He is the 8th.
Let's see if I can name them all. So specifically drafted, international signings don't count.
I don't know. Maybe they do.
Ben Petrick, Chris Iannetta.
Catchers drafted by the Rockies
that have made their big league debut
with the Rockies. So they've been
with the Rockies. Let's see here.
Yeah, how would I even find that? No, well, might be an extra credit thing to look up.
Remember Danny Ardoin?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking at the big list of all the catchers who have ever played for the Rockies. Jordan Pacheco.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 3. Tony Wolters wasn't drafted by the Rockies. Neither was Hundley. Dustin Garneau. Was he drafted by the Rockies?
Dustin Garneau.
I'm pretty sure he was.
Seems like he was. This is making our episode run long. Yes, 19th
round in 2009 at Cal State Fullerton. So there's 4. So Romo, Iannetta, Garneau, Petrick. This is a tough one.
I have to see a list of their all-time catchers.
It won't help. I'm literally looking at one right now. And it's just a bunch of guys that... Adam Melhuse.
Nope.
Adam Melhuse might be before your time.
A lot of them are.
No, he was drafted by the Toronto Blue Jays. Adam Melhuse came back in 2008 and played in 7 games with 10 plate appearances. I think it's time to wrap this up. Otherwise, we're going to be digging down this rabbit hole forever.
Niffy Perez. He did not debut as a catcher.
Never played catcher.
Yeah, yes, he did.
He did?
Mm-hmm. And then there was a wild pitch, and then they lost the game.
Weird game where it was that game where they had to put him behind the dish because they didn't have any catchers left, right?
Mm-hmm.
Reminds me of when I play MLB The Show, and I like to put a lot of guys out of position. My favorite one was the all pitchers lineup, where I forget I think it was like 2000. I think it was 2021 or something, where I just played a game where every position player was a different pitcher. So I had like Herman Marquez at first base, and I think I had Antonio Senzatela catching. Kyle Freeland was in the outfield. Michael Givens was at shortstop because he was originally a shortstop before he changed into a pitcher.
There you go. Yeah, fun stuff. And there's some homework for you. Find the 8 catchers.
You got 4 left to find.
But yeah, general housekeeping real quick. Nojo's back. Hooray! Lucas Gilbreth is back finally. Hooray! We'll get to see him more. Senzatella had a rehab start down in High A Spokane. 2 runs over 2 innings, gave up a home run.
He looked like a guy who hadn't pitched in about 2 years, and that's pretty much what it was.
Yeah. So we'll see. Maybe he gets a start by the end of the season. We shall see.
I don't think they're going to rush him at this point. I think there's still a possibility that he is still rehabbing by the end of the season.
Yeah, probably. But we never know. Could show up by the end of September. But wake me up when September ends. But that'll do it here for Affected by Altitude. Evan, real quick, where can the folks find you?
Find me on Twitter at Evan_Lang27 and on purplerow.com, writing the Monday Rock Pile and doing the weekly Pebble Report on Tuesdays. You can also find us by looking at our cool list of links below here that Skyler added to our streaming layout, because you can find Rocky Mountain Rooftop on all of your favorite platforms, including Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Rocky Mountain Rooftop. That's at ROCKYMTN Rooftop.
Mm-hmm. Also, Brian Servin also fits into those catchers. So you got 3 more to find. You can find me over at @sideline_crowd, and then right in the Wednesday Rock Piles at purplerow.com. And then you can find this article and other articles over at fansfirstsports.com.
Does Hunter Goodman count?
I don't know.
Because he is a catcher.
Could, yeah.
He was drafted as a catcher, but it hasn't been his primary position. And he did not make his big league debut behind the plate.
Yeah. Is that the stipulation?
You tell me. You're the one who brought it up.
I don't know. They mentioned on the broadcast today.
Tom Murphy. There's at least 6.
Maybe 7 if we count Hunter Goodman.
Maybe 7 if we count Hunter Goodman.
Willian Rosario, but he wasn't drafted.
Yeah, it's an international.
So who knows?
Oh, man. Remember Ryan Hannigan as a Rocky?
Very briefly. That was in 2017. That was pretty recent.
But he didn't really play that much.
Yeah. Anyways. But this has been Affected by Altitude. Appreciate you tuning in every week. Putting up with our shenanigans.
Michael McHenry. There's 7. Potentially 8 if you count Hunter Goodman. I've done it. I've cracked the code.
There we go. All right, we'll wrap it up on that bombshell.
I am the greatest.
Until next time, I'm Skyler. That's Evan. Farewell.
Farewell.